This chain lube costs about, on average, £7 for 120 millilitres. This next brand costs on average £8 for 120 millilitres. My DIY chain lube costs on average 42p for 120 millilitres. But in this video we're going to make this deluxe version of DIY chain lube with PTFE for about £2 for 120 millilitres. Why make your own chain oil, I hear you say? Life's too short, some of you may say. Well, there are quite a lot of good reasons to make your own chain oil. It is easy to do, it is far cheaper using existing oil you may have in the back of the garage. Have plentiful supply of it, you can choose the viscosity that suits your riding conditions, it's really quick to make, makes existing wet lubes go that much further, and it's quite satisfying to do. Now I prefer a very wet, thin lubricant I can apply before each ride and so minimise the collection of dirt and muck. Here in Scotland, a lot of the riding is in wet, mucky conditions, and so I hose down that drivetrain after each ride whenever possible when I get home. If I have let the drivetrain get somewhat dirty or I've been away for the weekend, then on return I jet wash the drivetrain thoroughly to be sure to remove any grit. I jet wash the cassette, the chain, and the jockey wheel all together. Of course, using a jet wash set at the highest setting, I am careful not to point the jet wash in any direction of any bearings, especially those bearings set in the cassette's freewheel hub. The most important thing above all else is it does not matter if you have a good chain lube oil if you do not clean your chain regularly. Piling on more lube on top of old is not going to work and defeats the purpose of maintaining your drivetrain. Go far as to say it makes matters even worse. You're actually making a grinding paste. The silica grit found in a lot of mud and gravel makes for the smallest metal files in the world. Silica, or SiO2, grades at about 7 out of 10 on the Mohs hardness scale, diamond being at 10. Sand is a good example of silica grit. The aim of my chain lube is primarily to lubricate the chain and make it a lot easier to clean, with the least crap building up upon it. Reducing wear is the next important consideration, of course, because I want to make what is an expensive consumable part last as long as it possibly can, especially in today's bike parts supply challenges. And another thing, I'm not interested in saving mere watts of power. I have other bigger challenges to maintain cadence than a few watts lost because I do not perhaps have the ideal lubricant. As you can see, this brings up the drive chain to a really clean state, almost like new if done regularly. Being just water will not remove all of the oil in some cases, but this is okay in my opinion as long as I've removed all the dirt and grit between all the chain links. And if you want to be sure that the chain is clean as it can be, use this chain scrunch test to check. To do this I hold the chain and twist it in my fingers. If I do not feel any grittiness or hear any scrunching sounds, then I'm happy with the chain being clean. After I've let the drivetrain dry, I apply my DIY lube to the chain, thoroughly soaking it to the point it's likely to start dripping off the chain. I then leave it to dry or I'll go for my next ride. If conditions are really mucky and because my lube is really thin, I may apply a little thicker lube on top of my DIY lube. I find doing this means the thicker lube goes a long way penetrating chain links quickly as the white spirit carries the lube deeper into the links. I do have these lubes in my toolbox, but they're not my go-to lube. For a good number of years now I've been making my own chain lube using this motor oil. There's nothing special about it apart from the fact I have it and it's not being used to refuel the cars. My cars are serviced professionally now. So I do not want the oil to go to waste, so this is what I use to make my DIY lube, which costs about 42p for 120mm if you were buying this oil today. So for me at this time, my DIY lube is even cheaper. This DIY wet lube is a mixture of about 75% white spirit and 25% engine oil. That is it. Over the years I made the oil mix thinner so the oil lasts for most of the rides for any one day, soaking the chain again for the next ride. I do carry with me this little tiny bottle if I need to add more oil during my ride, just carry that in my backpack. But I'm not going to show you how to make the simple DIY chain oil. I'm going to make a deluxe version of this oil with a couple of extra ingredients. Now I based my ratio of ingredients on a Deluxe Chain Lube blog article found on the website called gearedforadventure.com. I will leave a link to that article in the video description below. So what do we have to make this deluxe chain oil? Well, first we have the white spirit, and if you're watching in the USA you will probably know this is mineral spirit, and if you're watching in Australia or New Zealand you will probably know this is mineral turpentine. White spirit, by the way, is not turpentine. White spirit is a petroleum distillate turpentine is a tree resin. For the Deluxe DIY chain lube oil, I'll be using the same 10W40 GTX Magnatac engine oil as before in my previous DIY chain lube. So what are the extra ingredients I'm going to use to make the Deluxe DIY chain lube? Well, next up is a 300ml bottle of STP oil treatment with zinc oxide. And the final ingredient is 50 grams of PTFE Teflon powder. And that is it. All we have to do is put all these together. With these ingredients, I'm going to make 1.2 litres of Deluxe wet lube oil. No particular reason to make 1.2 litres apart from the fact it's 10 times more than 120 millilitres, making the price comparison easier to see in this video. Now, there's also no exact mixing ratio when putting all this together. It's the guidelines. I'm aiming for a low viscosity lube, much like the DIY lube I've had made before. You can vary the ratio of the ingredients to your liking, of course. This is the cost of each of the ingredients when bought as a whole. This will vary depending on where you're buying each of the ingredients, of course, the volumes you want to buy, and how you're going to store the final solution to minimise wastage. Even though I have the engine oil already, this is the cost of that oil if I were to buy it today. Okay, using these ingredients in the ratios given, I will be making 1.2 litres of Deluxe chain lube, and I'll be using the white spirit bottle to hold the final solution. So I'm going to use all of this PTFE in this 50 gram packet. I'm going to be using all of this 300ml STP oil treatment oil. I've measured out already 290ml of mineral oil in this bottle, which I'll be mixing into the solution later. And then I will be taking 290ml from this large canister of oil. But you may have noticed I've missed out 120ml from the final solution. I'm going to use an extra 120ml of white spirit to mix with the 50 grams of PTFE powder to bring it up to a volume of 120ml. When I bring all those volumes together, or those mixtures together, I will aim to have 1.2 litres of Deluxe wet lube oil. So using those ratios as shown in the slides, let's start making that Deluxe chain lube. So before we get started, let me show you some extra bits and pieces I need to help me along the way. Small measuring beaker to measure off the PTFE solution. Small funnel, though I might need a bigger one than this to pour into the white spirit bottle later. Mixing stick. And the 120ml of extra white spirit to make that PTFE 120ml liquid solution. And last but not least, some kitchen roll to stop any mess if there's any. I'm at my filming countertop. I wouldn't normally make solutions like this in front of the cameras, and I'm going to be using the floor below me, so you might see all these camera positions change as I accommodate to film on the floor and try not to make a mess. So to start all this off, I'm going to first mix up the PTFE powder with the white spirit to make that 120ml of solution. This stuff is really quite fine, and you ought to try not to get too much of it on your fingers. And when they put this powder in here, it doesn't sit at the bottom. So there you go, all the white powder. It makes your fingers go a little teeny bit funny, so don't try to get too much on your fingers. Just to show you how fine it is, just use this spatula. See, that's the powder there. I'm going to put this in the mixing bowl. It's getting affected by static as well. So that's that in there. I think most of that's done. I'm now going to transfer this into the mixing pot. Put that in there. So now to add the full 300ml of STP oil treatment into the pot. So I'm going to leave this upside down in there, the basis that I want to maximise and not waste anything. And this is why you need a big pot like this, so you can mix it all together. And the next thing to do is to add the GTX oil. Now we add the final part to this, which is the white spirit. This up, get it out of there.
all mixes together quite nicely. It's quite liquid. So what I need to do now is just put that in my now empty White Spirit 2 litre bottle. Okay, so this is the finished solution of Deluxe PTFE chain lube, and you might see there's a bit more than I originally had because I decided to thin it down a little bit more. And the final thing to do, because PTFE powder does not dissolve in any of this, it will sit and sink to the bottom eventually. This will clear up. Last thing to do, like you do in rock and roll lubricant, is add a marble or a stone to the mixture. So when you go to use it again, give it a quick shake. That will take the PTFE powder, put it back into the solution, and then you can use it on your chain or into another bottle. So that is it. We have a wet chain lube with PTFE powder in it at a fraction of the cost of purchasing wet lube, and at the viscosity to suit your specific riding conditions. And as you have seen, it's really quite easy and quite quick to make. And remember, you can still use any purchased wet lube you may have with your DIY chain lube to thicken it up, just in case you have the wettest of riding conditions, for us making these effectively last longer and cheaper, and importantly not go to waste. A win-win situation all round, I think you would agree. If you have any hints and tips on how you make your wet chain lube, then do share them in the comments below. I really would love to see what you use and what alternatives are out there. There'll be more maintenance bike tip videos or shorts coming, so do hit that subscription button to be sure not to miss them. By the way, if you're new to this channel, I also make mountain bike route description videos with full 3D maps showing where you can ride single track, how to get there, start and stops with elevations and all the details, showing off some of the best routes in Scotland. So do check them out on this channel to be sure not to miss out on excellent riding conditions. Scotland is a beautiful place to ride. Oh, and if you do like this video, then do hit that like button to inform YouTube algorithm that you liked it too. Thank you for watching and helping this channel grow. Keep well, keep safe, and I'll catch up with you next time.